Hello and good morning. My name is Teresa Ono, and I thank you for joining us for today's virtual Gotane Service for Sunday, May 16th, 2021, at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. Gotane is held annually to celebrate the birth of Shinran, the founder of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. Shinran's birth is given as May 21, 1173. He was born in the Hino area near Kyoto, Japan. Today's service will feature the sutra chanting of Juseige with Reverend Elaine Donlin, followed by a Dharma talk by Reverend Henry Adams, a Gatha titled Embraced by Amida's Vow, and a closing meditative reading. But first, let us begin with group reading. Please join me in reciting the three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult it is to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principles of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear it and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.
Today, we come together to commemorate the birth of Shinran Shonin, the founder of our Jodo Shinshu tradition. It is with a sense of indebtedness and reverence that we acknowledge the great contribution that Shinran has made as we awaken to the gift of light and life each time we recite the Nembutsu. Humbly joining our hands in Gassho, we gratefully say, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Juseige, the three sacred vows from the larger sutra of immeasurable life. Gagon chosegan, ishimu jodo, shigan humanzok, seifujo shogak, ga omuryoko, Hui dai seishu, hu saisho bingu, seifujo shogak, gashijo bundo, myosho chojipo, kukyo mishomon, seifujo shogak, Ryokujin shonen, joeshu bongyo, shigumu jodo, isho tenin shi, jinriki endai ko, ushomu saido, shoujo sankumyo, Kosai shuyakunan, kaihi chiegen, meshi komoan, eisoku sho akudo, sudan zen shumon, koso jo manzok, ioro jipo, nichigan shujuki, tenko ompugen, ishu kai hozo, kose kudoku ho, jo odai shuchu, seppo shishiku, kuyo isai butsu, gusoku shu tokuhon, gane shitinjoman, tokui sangayo, nyobuten mugechi, sudan mifusho, ganga kuerik, toshi saisho son, shiganya koka, daisen no kando, koku shotenin, tojin myo ke. Namandabu, 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 namandabu. Gani shikudoku, byodo seisai, doho daishin, ojo May this merit virtue be shared equally with all beings. May we together awaken the Bodhi mind and be born in the realm of peace and joy. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 namanda.
Namandavats, 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 namandavats. Please join me in Gassho. Of those who encounter the power of the primal vow, not one passes by in vain. They are filled with the treasure ocean of virtues, the defiled waters of their blind passions, not separated from it. Namandavats, 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 namandavats. Hello, and thank you for joining us for our Gotane service this year. Once again, observing in unusual circumstances. We're not quite out of the woods yet with this pandemic, but I feel like we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and if we can stay the course for just a few more months, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to soon be able to gather together in person to appreciate the Dharma. In the meantime, we are continuing our services in this way. It's a wonderful way for us to connect and to observe these important occasions. Today being our Gotane service, in which we reflect upon the life and celebrate the birth of our true teacher, Shinran Shonin. This Gotane service is a time in which we recall the events of Shinran Shonin's life, and for me, I always think about the early years of Shinran's life. Shinran Shonin lived in uncertain times, as we do today. Shinran Shonin's lifetime was marked by ongoing warfare and conflict in Japan. And at the time of his birth, there were two main groups, two large clans that were fighting for control of Japan, the Taira and the Minamoto. And they were ruthlessly battling for control of territory, land, resources. And in many cases, those in power acted solely in the interest of preserving their power, with little concern for the needs or the difficulties that their actions would create for the common people. And at times when there was a great need among the common people, the first priority of the ruling clans, the warring clans, was often to preserve their power by any means necessary. So their battles would completely destroy farmland, would ransack communities, burn down villages, and as a result, the common people would be left with no livelihood. And so in the years that followed Shinran's birth, the Taira clan, one of these ruling clans, had the upper hand and was in power. And so those associated with the Minamoto clan were very vulnerable, felt themselves to be in danger. Now, it's said that Shinran Shonin's family had some connections with the Minamoto, and so one theory about Shinran Shonin's early life is that because of these connections, it was deemed that the safest route for the family to preserve the lives of the family members would be for all of the male family members to enter into the Buddhist order, to become monks, to leave society, to enter the Buddhist world, and there they would largely be left undisturbed because they'd renounced the world and renounced all ambitions within the world. So this was seen as an option for people to live safely in difficult times. So Shinran Shonin, whose childhood name at this time in his life was Matsu Wakamaru, his uncle took him to a temple called Shoreni, and he was to receive ordination under a monk by the name of Jien. And so they traveled, and by the time they arrived at the temple, it was already late in the day. It said that the sun was setting, and so Jien suggested that they could do the ceremony the following day, rather than having to do it at night. This can wait till tomorrow. And so the story that we're told is that Shinran Shonin at that time, he took up a brush and he composed a poem. And the words of that poem were, "For him who counts on tomorrow, like the fragile cherry blossom, tonight unexpected winds may blow. For him who counts on tomorrow, like the fragile cherry blossom, tonight unexpected winds may blow." It said that when Jien read this poem, that he was inspired to provide Shinran Shonin with his ordination that very day. And so by candlelight, then he received his ordination, or his tokudo. And to this day, when ministers of the Jodo Shinshu Honganji school receive their ordinations, it's done in the evening after the gates of our mother temple, the Honganji, have closed, done by candlelight. Even in the summer months when it's still, the sun is still shining outside or just setting, they'll close all the doors so that the only light is the candlelight, reminding us of Shinran Shonin and his dedication, his wish to seek the Dharma. how at the age of 9 years old, he had awakened in his heart a deep realization and understanding of the truth of impermanence in this world, that our lives, though we make plans and so forth, everything is fragile, like the cherry blossom. I think we've experienced that this past year. So many things we had counted on, so many things we'd expected have changed suddenly, and we've had to adjust and adapt to these circumstances. These unexpected winds have blown and kept blowing and continue to blow. And so we look to the example of Shinran Shonin and his teachings. We take refuge in this community, this Sangha, of those who follow Shinran Shonin's teachings. My first encounter with these teachings of Shinran Shonin and really sort of joining and being welcomed into a community of followers of this Nembutsu teaching happened when I was in Japan, and I particularly came to feel a sense of connection with this Sangha of those following Shinran's Nembutsu teachings when I enrolled at the Chuo Bukkyo Gakuin Seminary in Kyoto, where I did the majority of my ministerial studies during my time living in Japan. And I think back to those early days of coming into that community. Shinran Shonin entered this temple, Shoden, and it was really a kind of a transformative time in his life. For me, when I went into Chubutsu, it was also very interesting when I think about how all of our lives were changed, those who I studied with at that time. It's quite remarkable. It was really quite a motley group of people that were gathered when we started out the school year. We had some students who were from temple families, several graduates of Ryukoku University who were hoping to stay in Kyoto to finish their studies, or maybe just not have to go home and start working, but having a couple of more years to enjoy the pleasures of city life before having to return to perhaps a rural temple to work serving their Sangha. Some were retired retirees whose lifelong dream had been to study the Dharma. One of my classmates was a retired firefighter who had been saving throughout his life, and this was sort of fulfilling something that he had been wanting to do for many, many decades of his life. Some had married into temple families. Their spouse was going to be maybe if they're marrying into a temple family, either they were expected to help out at the temple, or maybe in some cases, it's a sort of tends to be a kind of patrilineal system where temples are passed down to from father to son, and in a case where there's no son, sometimes the daughter's husband is then expected to take over the family temple, and so some had sort of no prior knowledge of Buddhism, but were training to take over a temple. There were some who were really there under duress. Some of my classmates, their parents had said, this is what you're going to do, whether you like it or not. This is our expectation for you, that you're going to carry on the family temple. Or perhaps they were people who hadn't quite found their direction in life, and the parents said, just go to Chubutsu, just at least get these certifications and this credential as a minister, and you can help out here at the temple while you figure out their direction in life. One of my classmates said that his father had promised to buy him a car if he graduated, so that was sort of his motivation. He was in it for the car. It was a very interesting group, and I remember asking one of the second-year students, why are you here? What motivated you to come and study here? And he said something very interesting. He said, "Kizuitara koko ni imashita." He says, I noticed at one point that I was here. It's like I woke up one day and here I was. And at the time I thought, what a weird thing to say. But looking back on it now, I think that was really quite profound. We go through life making our plans, thinking this is what I'm going to do, this is how it's going to go, and more often than not, it is the causes and conditions of our lives that are propelling us along. And at one point, we kind of have moments of awakening and realize, oh, here I am. This is my life. And so we find ourselves in these communities. And for those of us who've encountered the Nembutsu teaching, we're brought together with all different kinds of people of all ages and all backgrounds coming together to hear this teaching that embraces all of us. And I had an experience when I was studying at this school that really drove home this reality for me. I was out having dinner with a few of my classmates in one of the clubs. I belonged to the chanting club, and so this was the chanting club. We were out having dinner with our teacher, the advisor, and he'd been teaching at this school for many years. He was a graduate of the school, and so we were talking to him, and some of the very serious, hardworking, diligent students were complaining about the other students who were not as motivated, those who would sleep in class, who would not wear their robes properly, who were seen as being disrespectful to the teachers, and they were really frustrated. They said, they're holding us all back. If we had a class full of dedicated, motivated students, then the teacher could, go through at a much faster pace. We could cover much more material. We could learn much more. If we all had a group of students, if we had created a kind of an elite track for the dedicated students, don't you think that's a good idea? And I was thinking, oh yeah, that sounds good. Grew up in this American education system where we kind of fast track people, and we have all different kinds of programs, and very early in our education, people are kind of identified as being gifted and talented, or hardworking, and are sort of put on a track where they can really excel. So I thought, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And our teacher at that point said something that kind of surprised us and caught us off guard, because up to that point he'd been kind of laughing and going along with the conversation, but he stopped and he said, no, absolutely not. This is not that kind of school. He said, what is written on the plaque above the Buddha shrine, the Buddha altar at the school? In the Onaijin, there was a big plaque, and it had 5 kanji written on it. Gaku Butsu Dai Hi Shin. Study the Buddha's great heart of compassion. That's the motto of our school. That's the motto of our school. That is the principle, the guiding principle of our school. The Buddha's great compassion that embraces everyone equally. So we could not create a group of elite. We could not rank and classify people. The culture of our school is that we all journey together on this path to awakening. And from that moment on, I began to kind of look at the school and look at that experience a little differently. And I recall when I went for my own Tokudo experience during the training session, it was very difficult for me, both physically and mentally. The Tokudo experience is kind of like it has sort of somewhat reminiscent of what you think of when you see a movie about army boot camp. It's very strict, and they're trying to kind of mold everybody into very dignified, respectable ministers. And so a lot of attention placed to sitting, being able to sit in that seiza posture, sitting with your knees kind of, your legs folded under, and to sit up straight, to wear your robes properly. There's a fair amount of scolding and stern speaking. So there's the physical challenges, but also the emotional challenges of being corrected for your mistakes. Me myself being an American with a good-sized sort of American ego and sense of self and all of that, it was difficult for me And I remember being in the communal bath one evening after our evening service, and then after that we had a long kind of a training for the next day. I was exhausted, and I'd finally gotten into the bath, and I sort of, nice hot bath, and I said, Kyo nagakatta. I said, this was a long day. And one of those classmates who had been, one who might have fallen asleep from time to time in class and, not highly motivated, he turned to me and he said, "Ya, Henry-san, chigao. Mijikakatta." He says, "No, Henry, you're wrong. It was a short day." I thought, wow, that's true. This encounter, this time together, this brief moment of our lives. He had heard and received this teaching of Shinran Shonin, that our lives are like this cherry blossom that passes quickly. Right? We don't know how much more time we have together, so let us cherish this moment together. So this is the profound insight of Shinran Shonin. His whole life, from when he was a young child, was a reflection of this truth. He lived a long life. Today we celebrate the birth, but throughout the year we think about his journey in life. We take comfort in this teaching that he received and that he shares with us. Because Shinran Shonin never promoted himself as a great teacher. He always encourages us to turn our minds to the Buddha. And so I chose this passage that I read at the start of my talk from his wasan, his hymns on the Pure Land Masters. And in this passage, Shinran Shonin says, "Of those who encounter the power of the primal vow, the vow of Amida Buddha, not one passes by in vain. Each of our lives are precious. Each moment of this life, though difficult, is rich in meaning, precious opportunity. They are filled with the treasure ocean of virtues, the defiled waters of their blind passions not separated from it." So even in the midst of our frustration, our anger, our difficulties, our greed, our clinging, that when we hear Namo Amida Butsu, we entrust ourselves to the Buddha's compassion. We realize that we're supported by a warm and embracing community of fellow travelers in the Nembutsu. Then we truly find that this life we live is a precious encounter with great compassion. So I thank you for gathering in this virtual way to observe Gotane. I hope that you are well and living with deep peace of mind in the Nembutsu. Please join me in Gassho. Namman Dabutsu, 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 Namman.
Although the thread of hope appears to weaken, we can rebuild its strength with Amida's love. Although the chains spread peace. Embraced by Amida's vow, we are taught to reach out and call. Namo Amida Butsu. The Dharma will bring peace to all. The Dharma will bring peace to all.
This meditative reading is from Taitetsu Uno. The approach to the Pure Land path is to first awaken to the fact that we are the very objects of compassion. For we live by the sacrifices of others, both known and unknown, by those who love us and forgive our shortcomings, by the gifts of nature that provide food on our tables. Vegetables, fish, fowl, and other things that give up their lives so that we can extend our own life. We realize true gratitude when we are awakened to the fact that the foolish being who fails in being compassionate is the very object of boundless compassion. How then can one not respond by living the life of compassion for oneself and others? This is the very way of cultivating compassion in the Pure Land path. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. For today's announcements, the BCSF Book Club meets every other Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. via Zoom. Mindful Meditation with Leo Jocelyn meets on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 p.m., also via Zoom. The BCSF board meetings have been moved to the third Sundays of the month to avoid conflicting with the BWA meetings. As always, everyone is welcome to attend the board meetings and participate in the discussions. If you have any questions about these announcements, please feel free to call the BCSF office for more information. The phone number is 415-776-3158, or you can email at bcsfoffice@gmail.com. That's bcsfoffice@gmail.com. For today's appreciation, thank you to Reverend Elaine Donlin for leading the sutra chanting. Thank you to Reverend Henry Adams for his Dharma talk. Thank you especially to Kevin Yoza for helping to produce these online services. And lastly, thank you to you, our Sangha, for taking care of each other and for staying connected and engaged during this time when we are all apart. We miss you and we hope you are all doing well. I can't wait for the city to allow BCSF to have in-person Sunday services again. I do miss seeing everyone and especially seeing our beautiful Hondo. Thank you for joining us for today's virtual Gotane service. Please take care, stay safe, wear a mask, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.